I'm extremely pleased to present you with our next guest, a gentleman who has served the VFW and his country for a combined 40 years. Last year, Fred Burns retired from his position as Director of Administration and Operations in our Washington, D.C. office. Prior to this, Fred served as Assistant Director of Veterans Benefits Policy in the National Veterans Service Department. But this wasn't his first retirement. Fred was first a military retiree. He served 20 years of active duty in the United States Marine Corps, during which he served in Vietnam and earned the Combat Action Ribbon, the Navy Commendation Medal, and the Navy Achievement Medal with the Combat V. Fred joined the VFW in 1993 and is currently a life member of VFW Post 2562 in Montgomery County, Maryland. They're out there. Since his retirement, Fred's professionalism and friendliness is missed by those he worked with and by the veterans he served. While his wife may take exception to this, veterans are the love of Fred's life, and his work showed it. His genuine care and compassion for veterans has always been first rate. It's a pleasure to present the VFW Distinguished Service Award to our good comrade, Fred Burns, in appreciation for his years of hard work and dedication.
Distinguished Service Medal and Citation awarded to Frederick W. Burns in lasting appreciation and spirited recognition of more than 20 years of unyielding dedication and stalwart service to the veterans of foreign wars of the United States. During his tenure, his genuine concern and compassion for America's veterans led to success while fulfilling the roles of appeals consultant, field representative for Veterans Health Policy, and Assistant Director of Veterans Benefit Policy in the National Veterans Service Department. The professionalism with which he performed his duties, along with his unwavering commitment to veterans, has earned him the utmost respect of the veterans of foreign wars of the United States. In witness whereof, we have hereunto set our hands in the official seal of Veterans of Foreign Wars of the United States this 21st day of July 2015, approved by the National Council of Administration, signed by Commander-in-Chief John W. Stroud, Adjutant General John E. Hamilton.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, John. When I first retired from the Marine Corps in 1992, Jesus, that was a long time ago, I was looking for something to do. A couple of Marines that I had served with over at Headquarters Marine Corps, which was in Arlington at the Navy Annex at the time, had sent their resumes over, Bob Gardner and Jimmy Lee Wallace, and they got hired. So I said, I think I'll try that. I sent my resume over in 1993, I think it was in January. And by golly, I got a call in February, came in for my first interview, and then I came in for my second one, and I got hired. Federico Jaworbi was the director then, and Larry Rivers was the executive director, and I wanted to say thank you for hiring me. My first job with the VFW was as an appeals consultant, representing veterans before the Board of Veterans Appeals. In my opinion, that was the most difficult job out of the three that I've had out of the Washington office, because that job is important. That veteran has filed a claim. It's been disapproved several times throughout the chain, and that the Board of Veterans Appeals is the last place where he can get that claim approved, and he's probably been waiting 3 years. I would like to thank the folks that prepared me to do that job. My mentor, Austin Smith, who taught me service work. In those days, you went through a year training program with a one-on-one, and then they put you on the job training for about 6 months. So Austin Smith was my original mentor. Then they moved me over to the board for my actual on-the-job training. And that's where I met Mr. George Sheets. For some of you service officers out there, I'm sure you guys know him. Boyce Richmond was the supervisor then. He's no longer with us, may he rest in peace. And George Estrie was the chief of appeals. They taught me service work and appeals. Again, that I think was my most important job. Then Mr. Wallace had taken over the Washington office, and he brought me over to the Washington office and asked me to become part of his team. I became a field rep. What that meant was I'm spending a lot of time out in the field surveying various hospitals. I was gone maybe a week and a half out of each month for about 5 years. My wife didn't like it, but she dealt with it. That job was very important because what you're doing there is you're going to the VA hospitals to try to ascertain whether or not veterans are receiving good quality and timely care. That was important. That was very important because we found a lot of stuff that we had to report to our leadership, which eventually gets reported to central office. Then I got moved over to Assistant Director for Benefits. I supervised the Board of Veterans Appeals and the VA Regional Office, the VFW Regional Office in D.C. I would like to thank some of the support staff that assisted me along the way, because, you know, in this business, as an administrator, you're only as good as your backup support staff, and I've had several. But let me see if I can remember them all. Teresa Aldana, she's the manager of support operations. I used to consider her my diplomatic advisor because, as you know, Marines aren't very diplomatic. And sometimes I'd have issues where I figure out, should I approach it this way or should I approach it this way? So I'd go in there and sit down and chit-chat with Teresa. Teresa, I got some issues. I'd come out feeling good because she would say, Fred, you can't do this, you can't do that. You know, you're not in the Marine Corps anymore. You can't go in and scream in the holler. You got to calm yourself down. And I learned how to calm myself down and be a good supervisor. Jennifer Mallard helped me along the way over the years. Sylvia Betts, she was one of my support staff. Marion Blackwell. I hope I'm not missing anybody. I probably am. And then I moved upstairs with Mr. Wallace. He gave me my first, second, and third promotions. I made a couple of mistakes early on in my career in the 90s, but he saw fit to promote me, continue to promote me, and keep me around. I guess he thought I had potential, and I thank Bob for that. In that position, I got to interact a lot with the chair officers, you know, and that's an honor. To every year, I get to deal with the commander-in-chief, the junior vice, the senior vice. That's a real honor because a lot of folks don't get to work with them one-on-one like I did. My biggest worry was one day that they would get stranded overseas based on something that I had done wrong. In that note, I'd like to thank John Hamilton and Gunnar Kent for always having confidence in me that I would get the job done. And last but least, my mentor at Director of National Veterans Service, Bill Bradshaw. When you first get out of the Marine Corps, you got to kind of change your ways. He always had this calming way about him. You never seen him raise his voice. He'd talk to you one-on-one, and I used to chit-chat with him, and he helped me make that change from a loudmouth, hard-charging Marine to a soft-spoken, hard-charging civilian. So, Mr. Bradshaw, if you're listening, thank you for the guidance over the years. You helped me a lot become the good VFW employee that I was, and thank you. Oh, can't leave out my wife. Finally, I'd like to thank my wife, Brenda.
That was close.
Yeah, for all the early years in my career when I was gone from home a lot. You know, I'd leave every Sunday, every other Sunday, and I'd say, I'll see you. She going to take me to the airport? No. You going to walk me downstairs? No. So I'd have to get myself to the airport and go out of town. Thank you for those 5 years when I was traveling a lot. She's a good VA employee, so now she's on mandatory overtime, so now I get to say goodbye to her on Saturday mornings when she has to go to work. And then the latter years when I worked for the executive director, I had a BlackBerry, and I'm dealing with the chair officers on the road. Thank you for putting up with me with my BlackBerry at nights and on the weekends. Gunnar Kent, if you know him, he'll email you at 2 o'clock in the morning if he's overseas someplace. Gunnar, if you're out there, thank you. But finally, thank you for allowing me to work for the VFW for the past 21 years. It's been my honor. Mr. Bradshaw told me years ago, always remember who you work for. You work for the membership, and I've always kept that in mind for the last 21 years. And as Marines say, simplify. Thank you.
Very good.